Danny Flex of Seconds Out, delighted to welcome Lou DiBella for the latest edition of DiBella's Digest. And once again, we have a holiday or a vacation, to use the US term, vacation-like setting. Where are you, Lou?
Just a little ways away from where I live. My friend has a pool. He's in the woods. We just took a little trip to say hello. Actually, I'm sitting here socially distanced from the whole world. There's no one else in the pool. Topolina's sitting by the side. Someone's reading a book in the front of the house on the porch. It's, just a day or two away.
Did you abandon
pretty crazy weekend? Pretty crazy weekend of fights, huh?
Very much so. Yeah. Your friend does know where he's going in the woods. You didn't just abandon him in the middle of isolation, did you?
No. This is just a guy that has more than one place. So now this place is was sitting here, and I said, you know what? It might be a nice day or two away. So called my friend, got the keys to his place. We're here alone. It's nice, actually.
Good stuff. And yeah, big weekend of fights. I guess from a UK perspective, the biggest was Dillian Whyte getting knocked out by Alexander Povetkin, despite starting the fight well and dropping Povetkin twice in the round before the end came. Did you get a chance to watch it over there on DAZN, and what did you make of it?
I never understood the fight when it was announced, Danny. I mean, I did it do big pay-per-view? I didn't see anything yet.
We haven't seen any figures yet. I mean, I don't think their expectations were incredibly high, to be fair.
See, but then that being said, I never really understood the fight because, you didn't have to fight Povetkin. He was 40. He had a rough background with PEDs that people pointed at. He's a good fighter. I mean, he's a guy with baggage, but he's a dangerous guy. So I always thought it was a dangerous fight. Like, I thought Dillian would probably win. He's the better, fresher fighter. And frankly, Dillian showed it during the fight. He was winning, decisively. I thought he was going to knock Povetkin out the round before. But that uppercut. And you know what? And Dillian's always been wide open for the uppercut, But in this circumstance, this is a circumstance where the rematch clause was perfectly justifiable. And also, I give Dillian the benefit of the doubt. He's sort of been on a back shelf through no fault of his own for a little while. And I think if he wins the rematch, he deserves his opportunity. So now he's going to get the rematch. So I think, Hearn did the right thing by making sure there was a rematch clause there.
They're talking about running it again in November. Do you think, given the severity of the knockout that was suffered, do you think that's too soon?
I mean, he and his people know that better than I do. Not necessarily. But I got to tell you, he looked like he took a concussive shot. It strikes me as a little bit ambitious. But you know what? If the fight happened in mid-December, would that be? I think that would give him right now when people mention timing, assume they're being very sort of loosey-goosey. Because I think everybody's a little bit uncertain when they announce timing of anything right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about fights at the moment, like you say, nothing's set in stone, but we're looking at AJ perhaps in December, Whyte in November. In the US, Canelo now is looking like November again. We're going to get a bit of a logjam perhaps if all these go ahead.
I don't think that'll be a problem. I mean, I also don't think all of them will go ahead. Let's see what happens. I want to be optimistic. I want to think that the world's changing quickly, and let's see what happens. But I just think there is still a lot of economic impediments to stuff. I think that I'm starting to read articles coming into the States about, areas of Europe that are becoming hot spots again. And, who knows what's going to happen in the fall. But I think that I don't think it's too ambitious to hope. I think all the people that they're announcing want to fight again quickly. But I think it's a lot more likely. Danny, that we'll see stuff getting announced and moving toward deals, but I think some of the stuff will happen in 2021. But that being said, I think that's normal under the circumstances.
Now, around an hour before we spoke today, Frank Warren announced his latest show for September the 12th. Not any major fights from an international perspective, but it features the return of Anthony Yarde ahead of a possible bigger fight for him towards the end of the year. I just wanted to get your take on Yarde and whether he's made any impression over in the US after that challenge to Kovalev, because that was, of course, out in the wilds of Russia, if you like.
I don't think he made much of an impression here. Not because he made an impression with me. I want to see him again. I'm a fan. But I actually watched the fight. I don't think a lot of people watched Kovalev and Yarde over here on DAZN. I mean, it's you know, I just don't think it had a big audience. So I don't think that but I think Yarde is a good fighter, and I think he's there's stuff he can improve on. I mean, he's still a work in progress. I like him. I think he's a real prospect. I was actually impressed by that fight, and I thought he had some real moments in that fight. I'm a fan.
And talking of real prospects, this morning, UK time, obviously evening, over in the land down under, we saw Tim Tszyu score a very impressive victory over Jeff Ford.
You know what, man? Like, you know, speak his name, Tim Tszyu. You know, this kid is a legit, you know, top-notch prospect on his own, and he's doing everything to earn it on his own. I mean, he's got that name, you know, which is magic in Australia and to real hardcore boxing fans. Anybody that followed boxing in, you know, the 90s knows the quality of his dad. But this kid is impressing me, man. And you know, Horn was a major step up from where he had been. Now, that being said, Horn's no longer a top 54-pounder. So people shouldn't get carried away, and they shouldn't rush. This kid's too good to rush him into a fight he's not ready to. And there's no need to right now where the world is at, where it's at. But I'm a big fan. I think that kid has got some real talent. And he's got some heavy hands. He can move. He's smart. I mean, Tim Tszyu the prospect.
And almost immediately after the fight, he made the proclamation, "Don't call me Kostya's son anymore, just call me Tim Tszyu," which I was quite impressed with. What do you think about following in the footsteps of a legendary father in boxing? Because you look at someone like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., and he's almost gone the other way. He's kind of the pressure of following his father seems to have broken him to an extent. Whereas Tim Tszyu seems fired up.
I don't think it's easy. I don't think it's easy for anybody to follow in the footsteps of someone who was before them. Whether it's a musician, son or daughter of a famous musician. I think it's very difficult to be in the shadow of your parents or anybody else, your siblings. It's hard to be in the shadows. And emerge and establish your own identity. I think I was very impressed by what Tszyu said this morning, because what he's saying is, like, I don't want to hear about, like, my dad had my dad's run. Now I'm Tim Tszyu, and know my name. You know, see what I'm doing. I'm going to establish my own legacy. That's the whole key, I think, in life to following anybody super successful. You know, a son or daughter of a super famous person is still not likely to be super famous. You know. However, if you just set your own road and your own goals and your own aspirations and you live your own life, you're going to be more content than if you try to follow, you know, in the footsteps of the person in front of you. So I thought it was a very mature thing to say, a very confident thing to say. And I also thought I just thought it was cool, you know. Here I am, I've arrived. Know my name, I'm Tim Tszyu. You know, I'm not Costa's son, I'm not his son, I'm Tim Tszyu.
When you do look at someone like Chavez Jr., do you feel that the shadow of his father proved, you know, an unbearable pressure for him, or was he always just had problems with discipline, perhaps anyway?
Well, you got to remember something. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, you know, and his dad was one of the most maybe at the time the most famous guy in all of Mexico. And, you know, and a superstar worldwide in boxing like there never was one. And his dad was traveling all the time. And, you know, like I liked Junior. I mean, on a personal level, like I got to know him pretty well during those, you know, times, you know, leading up to Martinez and before and after the Martinez fight. And on a personal level, I like the kid. I mean, I don't think he's a bad guy at all. But I think that he had a rough ride. I mean, it's tough to grow up in that kind of situation, and then, you know, then you become a fighter, you know, and then there's a lot. I mean, I'm not feeling sorry for him, because he's, in a lot of ways, he's been very privileged. But I think that it cuts both ways. I think there are sons and daughters of famous athletes and other famous people that, you know, are able to find their own path and maybe take advantage of their parents' success without having it hurt them. There are other people that are overwhelmed by it. And I think maybe Chavez is one of those that was sort of overwhelmed by it. I think he's sort of coming into his own more as his own person. I don't know if that ever means a championship level fighter again, but I mean, I expect that you'll keep hearing about Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And I root for the kid. I like him.
Do you feel some of these kind of sons and daughters of famous fighters go into the sport for the wrong reasons? They know that with the legacy they've got behind them, the name value, they can make quite a lot of money compared to other industries they might go into. Their heart might not always be in the sport.
I think the majority of them go in for the right reasons because they really want it. This is what they were exposed to it, had a love for it. I think there's a meaningful chunk that are in there for the wrong reasons, that just know that I can be mediocre and still make a living for a little while or have some kind of a career, maybe even get an opportunity I don't deserve because of my name. I think there are others that are more, it's even more of a sad case. I'm not going to get into names, but I've known kids that did it for their father's attention, whose fathers were stars and maybe not the most present fathers, maybe not there as much as they could have been. And then the kid, knows that, hey, if I follow in his footsteps, maybe my dad's going to take an interest in this. And, I think there's a lot of reasons. I mean, whenever you're dealing with parents and kids and fathers and sons, you're dealing in areas that are there's a lot of heavy shit surrounding them.
Before I let you go, we've talked about this fight before, but maybe only in passing. Leo Santa Cruz against Tank Davis is part of Showtime's autumn schedule, full schedule, on pay-per-view. What do you make of it as a pay-per-view attraction, particularly in these kind of financially constricted times?
Well, I'm not going to criticize any promoter or fighter or network willing to take a chance on pay-per-view right now. I mean, everybody's taking chances in their own way, and pay-per-view is just another way of doing it. I think this is a bold move by Gervonta and by Mayweather Promotions and PBC, because what they're really banking on is that Davis is right and that he's a major, now become an urban attraction, become a boxing attraction enough that he can do pay-per-view, that he's established enough of a fan base that he can prove that this is a medium that works for him. So it's taking a chance on yourself in effect. As a fight, I'm a big Santa Cruz fan, always have been, but I thought he was sort of out-muscled by Abner Maris. So I mean, I don't give him any real chance to win. And I hate to say that, but I just think Davis is too strong, and Leo is too small. Now, if Leo makes it really difficult for Tank, to me, that's a statement that Leo's just really, really, really good. And maybe Tank's not Killer Jones. But I really got to tell you, I think the Tank is really good. I think that he's strong. I think Leo's small. I think that maybe it can be competitive for a number of rounds, but I expect the size, strength, and physical power of Davis to take over, and I don't think the fight goes the distance.
And it is a pay-per-view gamble, as you say, but what's the bar in kind of post-COVID or still COVID?
You know what's
US?
Interesting, Danny? The bars are self-imposed, and what I mean by that's the following. I think that every entity out there, the people, look, there's only a couple of people doing fights regularly right now. At the moment, it's just Top Rank and PBC at the moment. And I mean, I'm talking about in the U.S.
Yeah.
And there are fighters that have been willing to fight and almost eager to fight for the marketplace that was available. In other words, the money that people were offering them right now, understanding it's hard to get a payday right now, that most fighters aren't getting a payday, and that they're willing to reduce their expectations to get a payday. There are a lot of other fighters that are saying, no, I'm not willing to reduce my expectations. I'm going to wait until you can pay me what you contractually guaranteed me. Bud Crawford appears to be one of those. He's gone back and said, I got a contract. When you can give me my money, give me my money. Sure. Okay, there's one other play. The other play is I'll roll the dice. I don't want to take the reduced money you're offering me, but I'll roll the dice. Give me a big chunk of it if it does well on pay-per-view. And maybe if it bombs on pay-per-view, maybe I'm getting the reduction in what I would get paid. But if I'm worth what I think I'm worth, then I'm going to make more money. And I think to some extent that's what the Charlos did. I think that's what Davis is doing with their promoters, obviously, and PBC. But I will also, PBC's in a management situation. They're giving the fighter if the fighter doesn't want to take a lot of money that's being guaranteed to him, and he'd rather bet on himself, they're giving him the opportunity to bet on himself. I think that's cool. That's fine. I mean, the market's going to determine what they get paid and whether they're the attractions that they think they are. So Gervonta, Davis thinks he's a big attraction, and he's getting the opportunity to prove it.
But it's so hard to quantify, isn't it? And in these times, especially with the viewing figures we've seen on subscription channels, regardless of pay-per-view, what is going to qualify as a successful buy rate?
Well, I'll tell you what the successful, what they're going to quantify and what I'm going to quantify are going to be two different formulas.
Sure.
But I mean, I think that in my mind, I think these pay-per-views could do well, and the fighters themselves will still wind up disappointed. That being said, the real is what was available to be paid if it wasn't on pay-per-view, and did the pay-per-view buys versus the expenses and everything else, did the revenue that comes in, does it exceed what people were willing to guarantee it on regular streaming or cable or whatever, you know what I mean? So it may very well be that there's going to be a very wide difference of opinion on whether these were successful or not. That being said, if you do something as a major boxing pay-per-view and it doesn't do 100,000 homes, it's hard to spin it as a win.
Yeah, we saw that with Terence Crawford when he made his pay-per-view debut, didn't we? That everyone came out to criticize it.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Well, always a pleasure. I'm not having as much fun as you by the looks of things, but
I wouldn't say this
enjoy our talks,
Danny, but for example, talking to you about boxing while I'm floating around in a pool is preferable to just talking to you about boxing.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I'll get working on my own pool for next week.
Oh, good speaking to you.
And
Bye-bye.
Take care, Luke.
Take care.
Bye-bye.